Searching the web for the most talented, creative, and intriguing independent authors.
The Emit Blackwell Show, diving into the creative minds of sci-fi, fantasy, horror, and paranormal authors. Their fantasy is our reality. Hello and welcome once again to the Emit Blackwell Show. Thank you for listening, and also don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. On this episode, I'll be speaking with American Fiction award-winning suspense author MJ LaBeff about her last cold case series. We discuss her inspirations, the roles of her complex characters, and who has inspired her as an author. Also, we will test MJ's knowledge of movie monsters, so stay tuned for that. So, without any further ado, let's begin. MJ, how you doing out there today?
I'm great. It's a little hot. You know, I live in Arizona, and even though it's, I think, the first day of fall equinox, 90-some degrees here.
Yes, and it's like, I'm over here in Michigan, and it's like 60, so...
Ooh, that's freezing.
Yeah, yep. Well, some people from Arizona might think that wearing a sweater in this weather might be a perfect opportunity. I'm currently in shorts, so it's a different culture over here. So anyhow, I got a question for you here. Now, when did you actually begin writing professionally?
2007.
Oh, okay. So
it's been a long journey.
So when you did start writing, was it strictly like full novels, or did you do like any small projects along the way?
No, I jumped into, so my background is in marketing and advertising, so I've always been writing, but of course, writing a book is very, very, very different. Mm-hmm. So in 2007, I had the good pleasure of meeting romance author Vicki Lewis Thompson. I had a great conversation with her, and I remember Vicki looked at me and she said, "Just write." And I thought, well, okay, I will. And I did. I sat down January 2007. I started working on my first book. Vicki and I had stayed in touch. She believed that I was serious, and obviously I was, because ever since then, I just kept writing one book after another, full-length novels. I think my first book was probably like 70,000 words. The books in my series are 100,000 or so. They're pretty good-sized novels, but the pacing is fast, lots of action in them.
So now your books, they kind of follow this seasonal theme. Was that intentional?
It was. When I first got the idea for last summer's Evil, I live in Arizona, but I grew up in northeastern Ohio, and I always thought a little bit about how seasons change people's moods and dispositions and seasonal affect disorder. And as I started to think a little bit more about that, I also started to think about full moons and moon cycles and how that can, I think, play into some people's psyche. And so, yes, each of the books in the series, that was very intentional.
Oh, that's good. I mean, and that's another thing, too, when it comes to marketing. You have like a marketing background. How do you incorporate the marketing into the books that you currently have?
Well, I really enjoy helping to share other people's work and help promote other authors too, especially people who I've had a chance to read. That always feels a little bit easier to me. For me personally, having the background has definitely helped, because I was used to writing, 7-word taglines and calls to action, because I wrote copy for radio and TV and also print publications. And so I found that to be very helpful. The tough side of it is when you're doing it for yourself, because, I always say, oh gosh, I always feel like I'm going, hey, look at me. Like I'm the little spoiled kid that I need you to pay attention. So it's tough. I primarily promote my books through Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I will say that I probably spend more time on Twitter than I do on Facebook and Instagram. Twitter's just pretty easy, and I've met a lot of really nice people there. I've met a lot of nice people on, all of the social media channels, but for some reason I seem to have found my comfort level there. And then I have a website, and there's a lot of great information about the books there and stuff about me too.
And you have a mailing list too. I just signed up for that just recently, and it's really nice because, I mean, I love getting BookBub emails, and I like getting mailing list emails from other authors who kind of keep me up to date about what's going on. What type of information do you include in a email marketing type thing?
Well, I like that someone's actually taken the time to want to learn more about me and what goes on in my life as a writer and other things. And again, I'm not always so great about promoting my own books. I always put a mention in there. For example, last month, we're in September still, I got an email from American Book Fest, and I won the American Fiction Award in the thriller category, and I was a runner-up. I was a finalist in Mystery and Suspense, and, that was exciting news and something I wanted to share with people via my monthly newsletter. But I really like to use the newsletter as a way to just let people know a little bit more about me, things from when I grew up to, a vacation I may have taken, stuff about my dogs. Sometimes it can be just random day-to-day stuff. I'm also a volunteer with the American Cancer Society, so I like to share important messages about maybe cancer research, or in the summer, protecting yourself from skin cancer.
Yeah, and that's another thing, too, is because, I mean, you inspire quite a bit of people. I'm sure you do. You might not know it, but people who are published, people who are out there and who are promoting themselves and their books have really inspired some other authors. Now, who has inspired you as an author?
Well, I may be the first to tell you this because I've listened to a lot of your author interviews, and
oh boy.
I've heard everybody talk about the king, and I'm not talking about Elvis. So I am going to talk about the queen of suspense, an author who has influenced me the most, Mary Higgins Clark.
Oh, yes. Yes, she would be the queen. I tell you, she's got some very good stuff, very, very elaborate stuff. I like the way that she can actually take you into a whole nother world, just like a lot of Stephen King stuff. And I don't know, maybe I just had to mention Stephen King's name on the show once. But yes, she would.
This is not fair.
Yeah, no, we're not sponsored by Stephen King in any way. But as I've said before, Stephen King, if you're out there listening, you can be on the show if you want. But also, Mary Higgins Clark is very excellent, and I can see that. I can see you being a Mary Higgins Clark fan. So,
well, what I always admired most about her books and her writing is that she's able to write these mysteries, and they're not necessarily violent or graphic. She does write excellent characters where you get so vested in all of their lives and what's going on, and she just keeps you turning pages. I can start reading one of her books and just be dead to the world, tired, but I can't stop. I just can't. And I've always admired her so much, many years before I even started thinking about writing, but she definitely was the first person who I read probably around high school, maybe beginning of college. And once I discovered her, it was like, wow, she had so many books out, because I think her first book came out and I was like a little girl. So it was just wonderful. I could go back and gobble up all her books. And then, this goes back to the days too, before there was ebooks and this fast and furious publishing world we lived in. I would just wait year after year for when her next book would come out. So she's just been such a great influence, on my writing.
And kind of like when it comes to mystery novelists, right? You kind of have to think I'm wondering how they don't run out of ideas, how they don't run out of mysteries. But then again, you look at the world the way it is, and it's like there's always a crime somewhere. Something needs to be solved. And it really does seem like, she can pull from those avenues. Do you do the same thing? Do you kind of pull from real life crime scenes?
With the series, no, not necessarily. Although I will say, so book 2 of my series, Last Fall's Hunted, actually came out of a personal family situation, which probably sounds like gas, but it's really not. I had an aunt who had kidney disease and was on kidney dialysis. And my mother obviously was her sister, and there was a total of 3 other siblings besides my aunt. And my aunt passed away in 1984, and I just remember her being on dialysis and being very sick, and they found a kidney, and they thought it was a match, and then it wasn't. And I think that happened twice, and I started to ask my mom a lot of questions in recent years about my aunt. And hey, I'm a thriller writer, so forgive me, but because all the family was getting tested, my sister and I were kids, so that wasn't an option. But I just started to think about, what lengths some people might go to, to find that perfect match to sustain a loved one's life. So that was an influence there in writing that book. And then in book 3, there have been other baby stories about women desperate for a child, or women who have been pregnant and murdered by their husbands nonetheless. So I'm sure that all of those different situations, true crimes, maybe played into some of this idea of Last Winter's Taken.
Well, see, and that's another thing, too, about giving your characters real-life motivations. For example, like you were saying, how far would they go to get that type of kidney? It gives that character complexity that, there is no real good and real bad. There's always this gray area in between that kind of allows for certain things like this to happen. And you can, not only can you sympathize with the protagonist, in a way you can sympathize with the antagonist, and it makes a more deeper story, way deeper than what you could see on like a TV show or something like that, where you only have a short amount of time to explain a crime, and so I think you've done really well with that.
Oh, thank you. And I'm so glad that you picked up on that, because one of the things that I think is very important for all of my characters is I'm always questioning, what is their motive? What is driving them towards this? All stories have to have conflicts. All your characters are going to have goals. That's something that all writers talk about, goal, motivation, conflict. But for me, it's always the motive with every single character, the good guys, the bad guys. What is driving this behavior, or, what this response? So that's really important to me.
Yeah, and now your newest installment, the last cold case series, Last Winter's Taken, it's out now. Tell us a little bit about what happens with that book.
So, and this one was, I always say it was a little bit of a departure from the first 2 novels, but has been really well received. So I'm just going to read you the back jacket cover really quick, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the murder of Willow Danby, a married woman and expectant mother, thrust homicide detective Rachel Hood into a murder investigation and missing persons case as she searches for the baby ripped from Willow's body. The mysterious undertone surrounding the current investigation forces Rachel to reopen a cold case from the previous year. Yvonne Johnson and Willow Danby couldn't have been more different. Wrong side of the tracks meets white picket fence. The only thing the 2 women have in common, they're both dead and their infants are missing. Even with a long list of suspects, alibis abound, and Rachel is no closer to solving Danby's or Johnson's death. She worries, where are the children? Rachel's psychic empathy draws her closer to the taken infants, and she suffers from a haunting premonition. A single clue left at each of the crime scenes links the cases together and leads Rachel to a mystery dating back to the year 1638. The sinister murders and search for the missing infants reunites her with occult crime specialist and psychic FBI agent Nick Draven. A mysterious enigma is unearthed for the first time in over 372 years and draws them closer to a modern-day sociopath murdering expectant mothers and taking their unborn children.
Wow.
There's a lot going on in that book.
Yeah, there is.
I said, if I start, I could do my elevator pitch, but I said, this is a great opportunity just to share the back jacket.
Yeah, and it really is, because it does kind of pull you in. It gives you that whole concept of this is bigger than the both of them. You know, it's bigger than the two main characters that you have going here, which is something that you haven't come across until this book.
Yeah, yep, that's exactly it. And really with this story, there's a lot coming together for Rachel personally. There's a lot of stuff coming together for Nick personally. And then, you know, we're in the middle of these two major cases. I had so much fun writing the neighborhood where this crime takes place and all of the neighbors and the rumors and innuendo. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, when you have like a serial killer or a psychopath, everything is unexpected, and it seems as though you've pulled out all the stops on this latest book. It seems to me like nobody knows exactly what's going on, which kind of leads me to my next question because, you know, Rachel Hood, she's a psychic empath, a homicide detective. I mean, she spans all three books, okay? How do her abilities as a psychic empath shape the story itself?
Well, so in book one, this is all new to her. So when we open that story, she can feel a victim's pain. And the first time she realizes that this is happening to her, it's when her sister is abducted. So we open the book, her sister has been missing for the last 4 years. And there are still women being abducted. They're still being tortured. They're finding dead bodies in cottages on the beach. And she feels all of this when it happens. It's paralyzing. It's painful. It leaves her with scars. She feels like she's losing her mind. She's not. Rachel's very smart. She's a super intelligent person. And she's going, who can I tell about this? And finally, in book one, she confides in Nick. And Nick has some secrets of his own.
Yeah, now Nick, he does have special abilities. How do they differ from Rachel's?
So when I started to develop the character psychic abilities, really why I became interested in this at all was because I really feel like all of us as human beings have wonderful intuition if we pay attention to it, that yes, unexplainable things happen, and we probably should pay more attention to those things instead of just writing it off. So for Nick, his biggest secret from Rachel is that he belongs to two very powerful witch covens. His family are witches, and his psychic ability is he has hypersensitive hearing. And probably in the real world of psychics and paranormals, there may even be a word for that, but I was very careful when I started to research some of this stuff because I didn't want it to influence my story or my ideas. And so I stuck with this notion of playing off of the five senses, which I think for some people can really be more developed. You know, I mean, we hear stories about, you know, obviously if someone loses their sight, their other senses are probably going to become stronger for them. And again, I think there's big parts of our brain that don't get exercised that we don't use, and perhaps all of us have some special abilities we don't know about.
Yeah, and that's one thing when it comes to the way that you write it, is when you're reading something, right, you only have the mind's eye working. You don't have all the senses, so you have to put all those things into words to describe it in a way that a person almost feels those emotions, which is an excellent way to basically pull in a psychic ability like that, because just like you were saying, we all have those senses. Or at least if we don't have all those senses, we can relate to most of them. And when you're reading, you can experience things in a way that your characters do. And to be honest with you, to have a psychic empath really gives an insight to what somebody who's in distress is feeling. You know, and if your character's feeling that same way, you can guarantee that your reader's doing the same thing.
I hope so. I mean, that was the goal. You know, I wanted the reader to be able to really experience some of the things that Rachel was going through. And also, you know, I've had several readers say, and one in particular I remember commented, like, you know, oh my gosh, these books could have been just straight thrillers without any of the paranormal elements. And, you know, I really took that as a nice compliment because I didn't want to take things too far into that direction, but I thought it made the stories just a little bit different from, the other thrillers, and there's a ton, that are out there.
Yeah, and now let's go all the way back to when you first published, okay? You actually are currently in a traditional publishing type situation. But before that, you were self-published, and your first book, Mind Games, how did the self-publishing world differ from the traditional publishing world?
It's interesting because when I self-published my book, although I had control over things, I kind of turned over all that control because I worked with a company called Killer Book Marketing. And, once I did that, then they kind of set the deadlines on anything, helped me pick my release date. And once we did that, it was like, oh boy, here we go, because they also were helping me set up all of my social media. They designed my first website for me, which I think I had that website for maybe about a year, and then I wanted to do something more custom and all that. But it was good. It was a good experience for me because it was the first time I had worked with a professional editor or, chose cover art for my book. But for me personally, I wasn't ready necessarily to say, I want to self-publish all of my books. I had really hoped to find a literary agent and to work with a traditional publisher. Probably my timing as a writer might have not been the very best because about 2007, 2008, the publishing world was changing quite a bit. Not only that, but the U.S. economy by the end of 2008 was not in a good place for anybody. Editors had lost jobs. Publishing houses were consolidating more and more and more and more. And you had to be the next big whatever, because opportunities became less and less. I can even remember reading stories just a handful of years ago about some mystery authors who had been with large presses that they were like, bye, we're done, and they ended up getting picked up, a lot of them, by Kensington Publishing. So, after writing for so many years and, learning my craft more and more, it seemed like the right thing to do is just time. And then I was very fortunate. I started to look at some smaller publishing houses. So I was lucky. By February 2017, Muse It Up Publishing had sent me an email, and they were so excited about the series. I had queried them with book one, and you're able to send your full manuscript for them to read. And they wanted all 4 books. And the email was kind of funny because the publisher had also copied the senior editor on it. And she's like, I want these books, and I'll fight you for them, or we'll arm wrestle. And I just couldn't even believe I was reading those words. I thought, wow. So I was lucky because it is a series, and, we got to make sure that I haven't made any boo-boos with continuity, or, Rachel had green eyes in book 1, and whoa, they're blue in book 2. How'd that happen? Little things, and I'm not really that bad. But so I just good fortune. The senior editor and the publisher both wanted to take on the full series, and it's been a nice experience.
Wow. And now that's another thing too, and we've talked about it on this show before, is when you approach literary agents or publishing companies, you have to understand, and these are for all the people who are out there listening, because you wrote a book and self-published it before, they had content to kind of base your past history on what you write. Some authors will try to go directly to a publishing house with their first manuscript they've ever written. They haven't published anything prior to this, and they haven't done any type of work outside of what they currently do. I'll give you a suggestion, and that is if you're thinking about publishing with a traditional publishing house, self-publish first. It really gets your name out there, and do it right. Make sure that you get the editor. Make sure you try to do a little bit of marketing and try to do something with your brand. Because once a publishing house, like a traditional publishing house like yours, MJ, hears about you, then they kind of say, you know what? They're willing to put in the footwork, and so are we. And it's just like anything that you invest in. If you invest time, they're going to invest time. And just like you were saying too, talking with editors and going through the whole process, it is a grueling process, and you have to have people available to you. Marketing, just like you said, you had handed it off to somebody even on your first publication. That helps because then you can do the fun stuff, which is set up serial crimes.
Yeah. Then you can do the writing. Well, it's still, working with Killer Book Marketing was really great. And, but it was kind of like, okay, so here's your Twitter page. And I remember sitting with Michael, who's the owner, and his wife also is an author. And he said, send out your first tweet. And I looked at him and thought, what do you want me to say? And it was so funny because another author who I greatly admire and I've had the pleasure of meeting and talking with is Brenda Novak. And she happened to be in Tucson that day giving a workshop or talk somewhere. And so I sent out a tweet to Brenda, and she, I'm sure she has somebody else managing all of her stuff, but I think I said something like, I wish I could have been there to see you today, at Brenda Novak or whatever her handle is. It was just hilarious because, he said, okay, now, you're going to have to start promoting yourself. But at least I had a couple of really good sounding boards there. It wasn't like me by myself trying to figure this out. It's like I could send some copy and say, what do you think about this? And so it was good. It was really helpful. And just a side note, Mind Games was not the first book I'd ever written. It was actually like my fourth book. Yeah.
So now, MJ, what was the very first book then? This is new news.
Oh, well, so I started writing in 2007, and I had, like I said, got to know romance author Vicki Lewis Thompson, and romance has always been a really big selling genre, and she said, you're a writer, you can do this. And it was so funny. My first book that I wrote, finished, went to a conference with it, pitched to a literary agent, was Kiss Me Goodbye.
Oh, wow.
And I was very lucky. I mean, Vicki mentored me for a full year. And, she obviously thought the book had merit and that I could write in that area. But every once in a while, my, quote, hero of the book would do something. And then, by then I had a critique partner, too, who's successful. And they were both say to me, no, he can't do that. And little by little, I started to learn, I don't think I'm a romance author. I'd always been a huge mystery reader, big thriller reader, and I kept doing these things that, it was pushing me kind of, I think, in a different direction. So I wrote that book, I tried to do something with it a handful of times, and I said, this isn't the book. That was like practice. This isn't the book. So I started writing another book, Haunting Lyric, that is not published yet. Got over 40 literary agent rejections. Put that aside. I've worked that manuscript so many times. I actually had an editor say in a workshop setting, because we were allowed to submit like the first page, she said, I feel like the author has chosen her words too carefully. And I thought, someone just kill me now. Because, you edit, you proofread, you edit, you proofread. And apparently I've edited that piece to pieces. I don't know. So then Vicki got in touch with me and she said, my editor at Harlequin, and that line has since closed, but my editor at Harlequin is looking for new voices. You can do this. Those word counts for the books are smaller than what I'm used to writing. So in about 4 to 5 months, I wrote another book, sent it to Vicki. What do you think? Got the critique, edits, whatever. Kind of worked on that because it was her editor. So I thought, wow, I might have a shot. Well, I didn't. But hindsight's 20/20 because, again, would I have been able to really write for that line? I mean, if you read Mind Games, Last Summer's Evil, Last Fall's Hunted, Last Winter's Taken, you'll probably go, I don't think so. It wasn't meant to be. But in the beginning, for me personally, I was still figuring it all out. So, for some people, it's like they write their first book and it's amazing and they do really well with it. That's not my story.
Yeah, and that's another thing, though, too, is like when you start, putting your name out there, even if you're just submitting manuscripts, right? agents are going to start to they all kind of talk to each other in some form or another. Most of them have submitted things to different publishing houses, okay? If you keep submitting things that you've done, new things that you've done, and I'm talking to everybody who's listening out there, they kind of talk. Like, for example, how many times did you submit your work to different agents and different publishing houses? They probably were like, how many times has MJ come across this desk? How many times have we seen this name? And now the ones who didn't pick you up are sitting there saying, why didn't we pick her up? Just like, let's take a big old jump at Star Wars, okay? I'm sure that Disney, before they bought Star Wars, were kicking themselves in the butt for not picking it up. I'm sure that Disney also probably kicked themselves in the butt for not picking up the Harry Potter franchise. So, it's like once you get out there and you get noticed, do it. Go full force, but never give up and always get your name out there. And you've done an excellent job, MJ, at really pushing your brand, pushing your books, and pushing who you are as an author and defining who you are as an author.
Oh, well, thank you. That means a lot to me because if I've done it well, then that's really incredible because I've worked at it for a long time now, and I'm breathing a sigh of relief. Thank you.
So now, you've been considered the girl next door with the dark side, but actually you have a very, very compassionate and caring side, and we talked about that a little bit earlier. What are some of the charities that you are involved in?
So the biggest charity that I dedicate most of my time and fundraising efforts for is the American Cancer Society in Tucson. In the spring, I'm involved with the Climb to Conquer Cancer Walk at a Mountain. And then about the end of summer in August, we have our kickoff breakfast for Making Strides Against Breast Cancer. And I know some people may have heard my story before, and it's on my website so people can read more. But I was very, very blessed in 2010 not to have to hear the words, "you have breast cancer." I had a lump. It was nothing more than a fluid-filled cyst. And since then, I have never had any future problems. Sadly enough, I've had so many friends have to face cancer. It's just been horrible. So over the years, my fundraising efforts continue to step up. And, I'm always looking for new ways that I can just share the mission of the American Cancer Society with people because they offer a lot of free programs and services to patients in need, to caregivers, to loved ones who need support, and it's very important to me. I'm also a little bit involved. I do the Alzheimer's walk every year too, and I raise a little bit of money for that as well. So in October, I'll be walking on October 21st in the Making Strides event, and then on November 10th, I'll be walking in the Alzheimer's walk here in Tucson. So I'm looking forward to both of those events and also getting involved. Every year I get involved with a food drive. So those are my three big things.
Wow, I'm telling you, those are some really big things. And that's one thing with cancer is it's just like, it's such a unfair disease because, there's children that are suffering from cancer and they haven't done anything to harm their own bodies. They haven't done anything that would instigate a cancerous tumor, okay? And it's so sad. It's the same thing with Alzheimer's. To lose your memories is probably one of the saddest things anybody can experience. We spend our entire lives going through this mess, right? But then there's these good memories, all these memories that really kind of make us who we are. And when we lose those memories, it's such a sad thing. I know people who have gone through Alzheimer's. I know somebody right now who is going through those stages. And it's sad because losing your memories is like losing a part of yourself. And we have the Alzheimer's walk up here as well. And it's something to where I'm even going to be walking in it because it's extremely important. I'm very surprised because I don't think I saw that on your website, but I was really surprised that you just mentioned that now because, yes, it is one of those diseases that are absolutely unforgiving, unfair, and it's not worth it. I wish we could eradicate those things, and hopefully science does that. But I'm thank you so much for doing those types of things.
Well, I think it's important. I've been a volunteer with the American Cancer Society for 10 years now, and it is the cause that I work the hardest for. Last year was my first year getting involved with an Alzheimer's walk. And I think the important thing that people need to know is that even if you can't give, even if you can't make a donation, going to those walks and rallying around people who have been newly diagnosed, who are in treatment, to be amongst their loved ones, being there and giving that support is so important, because we all show up, and some of us, I'll be with a group of people and we all know each other, but we come together as a bunch of strangers. And I know for a fact that the families suffering along with the patient, it means so much to see your face in the crowd walking that day.
Yes, and like I said before, thank you so much for all that support. And anybody who's out there who's been involved in something like this, you really feel blessed when you're walking, for something that doesn't just involve you. You're doing it for somebody else. And if there was just more of that compassion in the world, the world would be a much better place, So thank you so much, MJ. I really do appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. It is my absolute pleasure to be involved.
So now, because you've been established as a writer now, and like you said, you had a few ups and downs, you had a few scraps that you had to, scrap away, and you had to work your way up to where you're at now. What advice would you give a new author who's just kind of getting their feet wet?
Write. I think the most important thing is to write. You can always learn more about the craft. You can find a good critique partner, a good critique group. But write your story. Maybe some people get it right the first time, but I think for most of us, we don't always get everything right with our stories. Write and then decide how you want to get your book out there. If self-publishing, you find that intriguing and interesting and you can manage all of those components, go for it. Boldly write those query letters and those book synopses and send them to agents. Don't be afraid, because you never know when you're the next J.R.R. or George R.R. Martin, Stephen King, Stephanie Myers, J.K. Rowling. I mean, you just don't know. So I just say write, keep writing. Don't get stuck on one idea. Don't edit a book over and over and over. I mean, take it to that place where you feel you have that manuscript in the best possible, near close to publishing condition, and then go on your search.
Yeah, very good advice. And MJ, we do actually have a game segment here on the show, and we're going to involve you on this game segment. Now, because you've dealt with the crime scene of serial killers and psychopaths, we're going to ask you questions about movie monsters, okay? So, are you ready to begin?
I think I'm ready.
All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 3 clues, just like a sleuth in one of your books, and you're going to have to guess which movie monster I'm talking about. All right.
Okay, I will try to do my best.
Okay, here we go. First question, 3 clues. Sharp teeth, fin, and the quote, "You're gonna need a bigger boat."
Jaws.
Yes, very good. Next one. 3 clues here. Doll, Voodoo, and Good Guys brand.
Ooh. I'm stuck. Do I get a lifeline?
Well, no.
No.
Okay, you got to think about this, all right? It's a killer doll, okay? Voodoo was involved in order to get this doll to where it's at, and it's created by the Good Guys brand.
Oh no, is it Chucky?
Yes, very good. Chucky from Child's Play.
Chucky. Oh yeah.
All right, next one. Sharp blade fingers, burned, and nightmares.
Oh, love it. Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy Krueger.
Yes, very good. All right, here's the next one. Bloodsucker, fangs, and hunted by Van Helsing.
Oh, Sugar.
No, that is not his name. It'd be a whole different story if it was.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Doug, oh, don't you hate it when your mind does that?
Yeah, I know, but I got the answers in front of me, so it's not happening right now.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh, think. Oh geez. I don't know. Do I get a lifeline still?
No, there's no lifelines. The boat is gone. Okay, so that one was Dracula. All right.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And I kept thinking, like, Interview with the Vampire. Why can't I get... Oh my gosh, how stupid.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. You might be able to redeem yourself later. Here we go. The next one. Ski mask, Crystal Lake, and has an obsessive mother.
Oh, love it. Friday the 13th, Jason Voorhees.
Yes, that is correct. Here's another one. It kind of verges between sci-fi, so be ready for this one. Japanese, nuclear fire breath, and run for your life, it's blank.
Godzilla.
Yes, very good. Very good. This one also verges into the sci-fi world. Here we go. Chest bursting, space, and Ripley or Sigourney Weaver.
Alien?
Yes, and it's actually Xenomorph from the Aliens. We'll give that to you. Here's the next one. Puzzle box, pins on head, and chains.
Oh my gosh. Why can't I think of this? And I was out one time at Old Tucson. They do this huge Halloween night, and that creature came walking right towards me. I screamed my head off. Oh my gosh! I can't think of his name.
All right, that boat has sailed. That was Pinhead from the Hellraiser series.
Hellraiser, yes.
Yes.
Oh.
All right, here's another one. Hopefully we can get some more points here. Each of the questions worth like I don't know, 25,000 points. Okay, so you're doing pretty good. I haven't been keeping tally, but hopefully you're up there somewhere. Okay, here we go. The next one is white face, knife, and killer. The white face may also be a mask.
White face, knife. Oh, Michael Myers.
Yes, Michael Myers from the Halloween series. All 50,000 movies. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Here's another one, and this one verges into the Broadway category. This one is Plant, Hunger for Blood, and Seymour.
Oh, brother, I know this one. For some reason, when you said Broadway, see, I got Phantom of the Opera stuck in my head, and that's not it. It's the Rocky Horror Movie Picture Show.
No, very close. Well, not really close, but what it is, it's Audrey 2, The Plant, Little Shop of Horrors is what it's from.
Oh, Little Shop of Horrors.
Not Rocky Horror Picture Show. That's a totally different premise. Okay, here we go. The next one. Full Moon, Furry, and Transformation. Very classic monster.
Werewolf and what was the one with Jack Nicholson in? The London Werewolf.
Well, we'll give it to you. It was actually just the Wolfman from the movie The Wolfman. But
Wolfman.
So really, if you would have just put Wolf and Man together, we wouldn't get that. Okay. So here's the bonus question.
Wolfman. I was putting it together. Holy cow.
Okay, here's the final question. This one is a bonus question. This one's worth 2,926,000,000 2025.001 points. So this could redeem your entire thing here. All of the answers that you got wrong will then be clarified, and it'll just be considered a clerical error. Here we go. So here's the final bonus question. Red nose, balloons, and feeds on fears.
Whoa.
It has been mentioned very much on this show.
What? How did I miss that? The only thing that I hear mentioned a lot is Stephen King. It's Stephen King, isn't it?
Well, Stephen King's not a monster, but he writes about them.
I know, but I thought you'd just like it if I said Stephen King.
Yeah, well, ding, ding, ding. Okay, so what is the name of that character? Red nose, balloons, and feeds on fear.
I know it's that killer clown, and he's underneath the sewer system. God, why can't I think of his name?
Terrorizing New York City since 1953, yes.
Oh my God. See how my brain works? This is what all these questions are proving. I have all these little analogies going on in my head till I get to the answer. I don't know.
Well, how about
think
this?
Of his name.
You will get the points for this. It was Stephen King's It, which has been mentioned a lot on this show. The name of the clown was Pennywise the Clown.
You know what is so hilarious? I was going, wait, this movie just came out, and it was the reviews. And then I had friends that went and saw it, and they're like, oh my God, it was terrifying. And I had all these thoughts trying to connect me to the title, and all I was like, Stephen King, what is it? What's the clown? Oh my goodness.
That's okay, because, they had the deadlights, right, in that book, and it kind of mesmerizes children so, he can take them. So I'm guessing that that's what happened to you, and so we apologize if that's has happened. That's why you couldn't remember the name Pennywise the Clown, but that's okay. You won the game, and with like 2 trillion some points. Good job, and thank you so much for being on the show. This was so much fun.
Oh, it was my pleasure, and thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed so many of the other author interviews, and I'm just glad to have been part of it.
All right, and you can catch any one of MJ LaBeff's books on Amazon.com. MJ, is your email thing still open for people to sign up for your newsletter?
Oh, yeah. They can just go right to the website, and on any of those pages, they can just sign right up. MJLaBeff.com.
All right, and thank you so much for being here on the show once again.
Thank you.
All right, and this is Emit Blackwell signing out. Keep on reading and keep on writing, my friends.
Searching the web for the most talented, creative, and intriguing independent authors.
The Emit Blackwell Show, diving into the creative minds of sci-fi, fantasy, horror, and paranormal authors. Their fantasy is our reality.